The thing that is the most important that I've learned is it fucking doesn't matter on what the food looks like, where it's sourced from, how it's sourced, what the garnish is, what fucking plateware you're using, whether it's a 30-hour sous vide or not. If it's not delicious, if it's not well seasoned, it doesn't matter.
Hello, chefs. This is Chefs PSA, and I'm your host, Andre Natera. Today's episode is my friend, Chef Jake Rojas. This is a powerful story. It's going to touch on some strong subjects. His battle with cancer, working in some of the greatest kitchens, including the 2 Michelin star Alain Ducasse restaurant in Las Vegas, and the 3 Michelin star with Joël Robuchon, traveling the world with the Master Chef Society and competitions, and putting a perspective on chef's life.
What happened?
Man, it's been a long stretch, you know. I found myself in a moment of adversity, dealing with thyroid cancer, which I never fathomed would be my trajectory. And it's been, you know, a road that has allowed me to really dig deep and think about the things that are important to me as a chef, as an entrepreneur.
It was sudden, right? You didn't see it like it was just one day to the next.
It's really one day to the next, you know. It all happened in early January of 2025. You know, February of 25, I started to notice a, you know, kind of a lump in my throat, kind of having a hard time swallowing. And then, you know, went down the path of Western medicine and kind of in and out, seeing different doctors, different specialists. I live in the Boston area, so, you know, we've got Dana-Farber not far, which is, you know, kind of the cancer treatment center of the country. And so I was super fortunate to meet with some specialists in my area that, you know, gave me some insight, but also it just became a prolonged, you know, situation where trying to identify what was actually happening really took a lot of effort, I guess, from my perspective. You know, and kind of not knowing, okay, I've got something that's happening in my throat. As a chef, it was frightening, right? Especially when you kind of start to lose a little bit of your taste. You know, and we all know what Grant went through. So I started to kind of like go down that road of like thinking about, you know, what Chef Grant went through, and you know, started to kind of research a little bit of his story, and trying to apply some of the things that I found and the people that I talked to my own personal journey.
Wow, I mean, and you know, obviously I've known you for a long time, so I've been following along when it happened to where we're at now. How has it gotten better?
Treatment and time.
Yeah.
You know, I will say that, you know, this type of disease really strips you down to the bare necessities, mentally, physically, emotionally. And running restaurants, being a father, trying to not die, you know, you start to prioritize. What are the priorities that I have? Is it the restaurant? Not really. You know, is it the ego that comes along with being an entrepreneur and being, you know, a chef? Not really. It is time and health. At the end of the day, without time and health, and with health leading the two, there is no entrepreneurial mindset. There's no opportunity to lead and to be the mentor that you want to be if you don't have the health. And that was something that I guess I've taken for granted my whole entire career as a chef. You know, I think that I grew up in, you know, a time of being a chef where, you know, there was some piracy that was, you know, part of it. And I definitely pushed the envelope in all the ways. whether it was mentally or physically, whether it was alcohol or drugs or just the sheer amount of work that one wants to be a part of in order to be a creative, in order to be a leader, right? Um, all those things kind of just faded away and disappeared because I couldn't get out of bed because I couldn't swallow. Um, and that really made me reevaluate the role of a chef, the role of a leader, the role of a father, just the role as being a human being and kind of navigating the things we all navigate.
How so?
Without time and without health, you can't do those things. They become obsolete. So I don't know that I prioritized that in my past. And I have quickly realized in this last year, and if I really, shrink it down to the last 3 to 5 months, um, I've learned a lot about what I'm actually capable of. I thought like spending time in 3 Michelin-star restaurants like with Joël Robuchon and Alain Ducasse and being an entrepreneur and having 3 or 4 restaurants of my own, I thought that I kind of like, had experienced all the adversity that one might experience. Um, but this was a different level of adversity, a different level of what was being asked of me as a human being. Um, and to be honest with you, I'm grateful for the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that I was not taking the things that were like super important to me uh, as serious.
What did you learn about yourself during the process?
I think the learning moments for me through the process of going through kind of this very tragic moment in my life as a chef, as a father, and as just a human being trying to figure it out. I think the things that um, really created the most stress for me was the question of, will I be able to taste again?
Yeah.
Will I be able to swallow? The cancer spread into my thyroid, lymph nodes, tongue, and tonsils. So when I heard the word tongue, come from the ENT doctors and my oncologist, I thought the worst, you know, um, because someone who heavily depends on taste and smell every day, um, whether it's in a creative way or just a passive way, right? A way to get through the day. Um, and the thought of losing that, I think, really struck me psychologically. And I think that was one of the most difficult parts to overcome, was to get through the emotional stress of, oh fuck, what if
Yeah.
I got to lose my tongue? Or what if, you know what I mean? So those were the first questions I asked, as a chef, right? As a chef that, highly depends on the sense of smell and taste. Um, and I haven't, it's been 6 or 7 months of treatment, um, 3 months of hardcore radiation and chemotherapy,
Yeah.
where they go in and the radiation attacks, the clumping of cells that they call cancer. And during that time, the doctors were very honest with me. Listen, we know that you're young and you're healthy, but this is going to crush you in a way that you've never been crushed before. And I've been crushed,
Yeah.
right? Born and raised in El Paso on the border. I've been crushed in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
just as you have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, all right, let's give it to me. I can handle this. And I quickly realized that there crushed was not something I'd ever experienced before.
Yeah.
Feeding tube had to be inserted, which meant I couldn't eat, couldn't swallow. Now I'm feeding myself through a tube while still running the restaurants, still showing up, still tasting, trying to taste, cooking 3 meals a day for my kids, but not being able to eat. So I went 3 months with not eating or swallowing food and inserting food into my body, trying to keep myself alive through these purees, which is a whole nother level. A whole nother aspect in the health world, or in Western medicine, where we're feeding people that are physically ill with cancer, sometimes things that cause cancer, right?
Yeah.
I sat in some of these meetings with these nutritionists and these oncologists, and their goal is to get calories and protein in you. But lots of these shakes that they prescribe you, first ingredient is high fructose corn syrup,
Yeah.
right? And in all my research, sugar accelerates the growth of cancer, right? So, I had a hard time finding food that was not genetically modified, full of gums, and full of, bad ingredients. And there's not many out there. And that was difficult because at the core, someone who spent their life feeding people and trying to feed people in ways that I would feed myself or feed my children, that is going to nourish them, you realize, man, there's not a lot of options for people who are on their deathbeds with this disease. And it gave me, of course, the entrepreneurial part of my brain is like, okay, now my next venture is to create this,
Yeah.
shake or this food that is good for people when they're going through cancer.
Right.
Or something where they, they have to have a peg tube inserted in them. Still working on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last night we went to dinner, me, you, Gabe at Alice, and, we're celebrating and we're raising a glass of champagne and what cheers to, and then you cut it off and you said, cheers to health, because without that, there's nothing.
There's nothing, bro.
Yeah.
And it was never at the forefront of my mindset. I've always been in a place where it's like, okay, maybe I should get to the gym a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't do those late night pizza runs. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe I should cut back on this a little bit.
But it wasn't affecting you now. So it's like, I'm okay now.
I'm fine.
Yeah.
Right. And then all of this hit. I lost 55 pounds in a matter of weeks. I had to be hospitalized in the middle of everything because with all the meds that I was being given, I wasn't able to keep any of the pureed food in my feeding tube down. So I had to be hospitalized in the middle of everything. And the doctor's like, you're not doing good. It's like, well, you guys, this level of treatment really, really was devastating for my body. It was, I wasn't ready for it, even though I thought I was ready for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as of today, how are you?
I'm about 3 weeks or so back into consuming whole foods again. Which last night, we had a dinner and, man, it was kind of one of the first dinners that I've had since my treatments where, it felt like home. It felt like, okay, the food was well executed. I could taste the food. I was sitting at a dinner table again with friends that mean a lot to me, which is, obviously, a part of dining that gives us enjoyment, fulfillment, right? Hospitality. It felt hospitable. We felt welcome. And I was like, okay, I'm back. This feels like home again, right?
Kitchens are brutal right now. Everyone knows it. Fewer people on the line, margins tighter than ever, and somehow the expectations keep going up. There's just no room to miss anymore. I was talking to a chef recently who said the biggest stress wasn't the volume, it was the mental load. Babysitting food, timing everything perfectly, trying to be everywhere at once. And that's where equipment matters more than people want to admit. Rational's technology comes up a lot in those conversations. The iCombi Pro, the iVario Pro, overnight roasts that don't need to be checked, custom programs for all your recipes, consistency without hovering, completely automated cleaning, monitoring everything from your phone, the list goes on. And what really buys you the headspace? Less standing over pans and more time to lead the kitchen instead of constantly putting out tiny fires. When you're down to cook, when the prep list is rough, when the production ramps up, think Rational.
Yeah.
Just being at the dinner table with friends and consuming food and sharing food and cheersing and breaking bread, everything that I've spent so much time creating the relationships with the people that I surround myself with. So it felt really good, even though it was hard to, hard to swallow some of the crab dish. I loved it.
Yeah.
But there was a little bit of acid in it. And unfortunately with like some of the radiation that I took, it's really burned the inside of my mouth and my tongue, and it's created a very adverse environment for consuming food.
Yeah.
And I'm being told that that's going to change, but without health, there's nothing else.
Yeah, you're right. And, it's when this whole thing started, from my perspective, watching it from an outsider. I think we saw something on Instagram, and it's like, am I seeing that right? I saw you post something in the stories, and I'm like, am I seeing that right? So I quickly sent a text to Gabe, like, hey, am I reading this right?
Yeah.
And Gabe's like, let's check in. He's okay. I checked in with David Susio, who's a mutual friend who worked for you for a long time. And is he okay? He's like, he's good. He's Jake fucking Rojas. He's fine. Like, okay. And as more time went on, I was like, no, he's not.
Yeah, man.
He's not. And so we started checking in more, and and you have a lot of people in our circle that care about you, and behind the scenes, a lot of phone calls going on between myself and Gabe and Rico and David Susio, and
Right.
like, hey, what do we need to do here? What's going on?
Right.
Obviously, it's the extended family, right? So it's not people say family, but you know what I mean. It's the extended family. It's it's the people who care about you that aren't blood relatives, and there's a lot of them. But I know that from my own experience that. But when you're laying there in the bed, it feels like that. It's great that people love you, but no one else is going through this with me. It's me. You're sitting there. You're the one that has to go to the treatment every day, and
For sure.
yeah. So I know that every time we check in, and I think David Susio was, he's like, Jake's the strongest motherfucker I know. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just like you,
Yeah.
and just like so many of us, we've spent a lifetime in these careers of being a chef or being hospitality professionals, giving back,
Yeah.
making time, creating space for people that are dealing with adversity, dealing with a hard time, going through a health scare, or just a charitable foundation that we believe in, right? I've spent a lifetime in my career giving to these organizations, whether they're cancer foundations, whether lifting people up or feeding people that need food, right? It's always been a part of my coexistence with putting a white coat on. Right. I always felt it was always a duty of mine to lift people up and to nourish them with my talents or, my ways of feeling like I could support. So when I started posting There were very cryptic posts of me being like, okay, this is day one of, my journey of cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an unrealistic feeling until I started sitting in these rooms. I started going to these treatments, and sitting there solo and be like, wow, I've got a massive group of people that are going to show up for me and support me. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that's going to have to go through the treatment. And at the end of it, everyone's going to go home to their families. And I'm going to go home and I'm still going to be dealing with this. And I've never dealt with something that was so hardcore, feeling like, fuck, I'm in this solo. You know what I mean? But I wasn't. But internally, you internalize it as like, no one else has what I'm dealing with, the cancer I'm dealing with. I'm the one that's dealing with it. But I had so many people show up for me. The Tony Foundation showed up for me, which I'm super excited. Getting the opportunity. I'm here in Texas now, to hang with you guys. And then Gabe and I are shooting to San Antonio tomorrow to hang out with Rico and going to meet up with Tony at the Tony Foundation and going to one of the dinners. And, they, no questions asked, during Christmas, Gabe linked me up with Tony and they were like, Jake, what do you need? We got you. And, showed up in a time during Christmas when, like, in New England, it's one of our slowest times in the restaurant business. There's not a lot of extra cash flow, so lots of people showed up, created a GoFundMe for me, and kind of helped me get through a lot of obstacles that I was facing. But I would still go to these treatments and sit in these rooms with these people that I didn't know that weren't going to make it through the treatment.
Yeah.
And they knew it. And that was hard because you create these relationships, right, with these people. And I've never been in a place where I've created relationships with multiple people and what they were dealing with wasn't going to be what I was dealing with, right? I found myself in a place where I was going to be able to get through it. Some of these other people that I met, moms, dads, brothers, sisters, husbands, wives, family-oriented individuals, they weren't going to go home and be alone like I was. And I was like, fuck. At the end of the day, I'm going to go home. Whether or not I'm alone or not, I'm going home, And that gave me a different perspective, too, into time and into health.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that I've taken away from this journey,
Yeah.
is to be respectful of time and to make that time be focused on keeping your health. Because at the end of the day, whether you got 50 guests and you got the tasting menu and you got 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars, or no stars, it fucking doesn't matter at the end of the day. And doesn't matter what guests you're serving, doesn't matter who's coming in tonight, who's the VIP, who's not, how difficult your day may be. Fucking fish showed up, fish didn't show up. You know what I mean? All the adversity one deals with being in this business. If you can't show up, then there's nothing else.
So I'm talking to a friend of mine the other day, and we're talking about sometimes the guilt that chefs have because they don't want to leave a job for a better opportunity, or they don't want to better themselves out of fear of, well, am I being disloyal or whatever the case may be, because we're so used to putting everyone before us.
For sure.
I mean, it's what we do. We put the cuisine before us. We put the guests before us. We put
Totally
everything before us. And I mean, for people that are listening, that are watching the podcast right now, like, maybe you just need to hear it. You have permission to take care of you first. No one's coming to save you. No one's going to go through. No one's going to go through it with you and your family, and your loved ones, but you.
For sure.
And if you don't put yourself first, like because you're afraid to give yourself permission, like, hey, if someone needs to give you permission to take care of you, this is it. This is me telling you, take care of you first. You have permission.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No one ever said that to me.
Yeah.
No one ever said that to you.
No.
Right? Until you hit rock bottom, right? I know some of the struggles you've gone through as being an entrepreneur, as being a chef, you know, dealing with adversity, dealing with all the things that we're, you know, all the cards that we're being dealt. I know your story.
Yeah.
You know mine, right? We grew up in the same town, right?
Same neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Same neighborhood.
It was funny for people that are listening. Like last night, we're telling stories, and it's like where you went to high school. It's like, yeah, I got robbed at that bus stop.
I might have robbed a few people at that bus stop. Just say, yeah, no, it's. I never take that for granted.
Yeah.
You know, I think there was a moment in my life where I did.
Yeah.
And it's just because I was unaware.
What do you mean?
You know, just taking for granted, you know, that you're going to be given the opportunity.
Yeah.
Right. And I think opportunities come when you create them, which is what I realized. Right. And when I ended up moving from El Paso to Dallas, I met chefs that gave me opportunity that I'd never been given before, like Michael Scott, right? Pat Mitchell and Dave Sokol, like some of these guys that all of a sudden now I realize that we, you know, you and I were more, we were in that same group.
Yeah.
You know?
I remember doing all those food grazers at Salerno's or in the grass in the back, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But you know, those guys looked at me and they gave me an opportunity. They saw that I was eager to show up and looking for our opportunity. And, you know, I've transferred that into my growth, and sharing that with the people that have kind of come through my kitchens, you know. But none of that's possible without health.
Yeah.
I cannot stress that more now than anything else, you know.
But there's another part to that story, you know, because you and I came from the same area, same neighborhood. Gabe too, you know, for people that don't know, Gabe Ala's Top Chef season 18 winner. He and I grew up on the same block. He lived up the street from me. Where you lived, and we didn't know each other then because I'm a little bit older than him, right? So, and where you lived is like, well, I graduated in the high school that's close to where you live, right?
Yeah, of course.
And you know, knowing the same people, and you know, we're kind of talking shit last night. But the three of us and other people as well, but just, you know, just culinary related. And Rico too, also from the same town, and Fermin and a lot of other chefs. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize is like we left and we went on this journey. Like, because I needed to escape because I was a bit of a knucklehead. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with yourself? Like, well, I'm going to cook. I didn't know anything about cooking. I was like, I'm going to cook because it seemed like, okay, girls like chefs. I like girls. Boom. That's the easy answer. So, all right, go to Portland, Oregon, move 2,000 miles away, 17 years old. Don't have any life experience outside of the hood.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, and figure it out. Still trying to figure it out. And then from there, you know, my culinary journey, very similar to yours, through Dallas, through that same World Master Chef Society, competitive chefs. And then here you are. And, you know, you look at Gabe or you look at Fermin and, you know, all of us had to, you know, it's that hero's journey, like getting kicked out of the nest, and it was hard, and traveling through that. I don't know. It's wild when I think about it, when I look back, because a lot of people are in that situation where they think there's, you know, I'm here and there's no way I'm going to get out. It's like, man, I could tell you there is a way. It's hard, and sometimes you're going to think no doors are opening for you, but then you look back and you realize every single door open for you to get to where you are.
For sure. You got to knock on the door.
Yeah.
You got to create the path.
Yep.
that's what it comes down to, right? Very similar to you, right? I found culinary because I found myself facing adversity. Um, you know, I chose culinary, or as the counselor put it, um, at Riverside High School and vocational school in the Lower East Side of El Paso. Um, we teach our students the basics of classical French cooking. It's like, what the fuck is classical French cooking? I grew up on beans, rice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Enchiladas in the morning, menudos on Sundays, going to the bodega to, carry the pot home full of menudo, right? Like,
Right.
I had no clue what that meant. But I love to smoke weed. And I thought, all right, I'm going to smoke before school, I'll go in, do some cooking, get a little munchies, have some food. Like, my mind was just,
Yeah.
obviously not developed. I met people at that place that shaped my life, that gave me opportunities, that believed in me. And pushed me to search for the path, and to not be embarrassed or not to be scared of knocking on the door. And if I didn't have that experience, I don't know that I would have been able to find my path out. Right.
Yeah.
And I say that with love because El Paso has lots of positives. But where I was at that time, we're talking about early to mid 1990s. Growing up in the Segundo Barrio area of El Paso, going to El Paso High School, like, shit was tough.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't just tough for me; it was tough for everybody. We were all in it together, right? And if you weren't from one side of the tracks, you had fucking better be from the other side, because if not, someone was going to kick your ass.
Right.
And it was just kind of the way it went. And I found cooking, man. And in the late 90s, I found myself cooking at a place in downtown El Paso called Cafe Central.
Shout out to Cafe Central.
Cafe Central, man.
You know who else? Do you know Mike Diaz?
I do.
Mike Diaz worked
Yeah.
there too.
Yeah. Gosh, man, I spent a couple years as a 16, 17-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 18, in the kitchen of Cafe Central.
Yeah.
I had foie gras for the first time. I had lobster for the first time. I learned how to make Caesar dressing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I had an anchovy for the first time. I mean, that restaurant opened my eyes to food.
Yeah.
You know?
It was back then it was probably the only fine dining restaurant. I mean, there was Chatfield's. I worked at Chatfield's. There was Chatfield's. There was inside the Dome. I think it was, Paso del Norte.
Yeah, Paso del Norte, yeah.
I think it was called the Dome, right?
I think it was. Yeah.
So there was like 3 restaurants that, like, if you're going to work there, there's only 3 restaurants that aren't cooking enchiladas.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
For
Or Chicos
sure.
Tacos, right?
Yeah.
That's funny because we were talking last night. I didn't know you had worked at Cafe Central. And I said, did you know this guy, Jacob? And you're like, yeah, I worked with him. And I was like, yeah, that was my roommate in Colorado. He was like, I was my first sous chef job. He was a roommate. He was a cook. He was a wild guy. And it's like, yeah, 6 degrees of separation. It's like, yeah, I worked for him.
For sure, man. I worked with a lot of really great cooks at that restaurant. And we were all pirates. I mean, that kitchen was full of pirates. And we went to battle with each other every day because the restaurant was fucking packed.
Yeah.
We were the show. And we were cooking food that I had never been around.
What did you say? Tequila shrimp?
Yeah. There was the Dos Equis clams, right?
Dos
We had
Equis
these
clams,
steamed clams, which I'd never had a clam either before, you know what I mean? And
like you said, trying foie gras for the first time, you're like, what the fuck is this?
my mind was blown away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I started to understand, okay, like in order to like feed my soul with what's happening here, I gotta, there's these books I was being turned on to, right? And
Yeah.
these chefs that I was being turned on to, and it opened up my eyes and gave me an opportunity.
Yeah.
But I created the path. I knew that in order for me to get to the next step, I needed to go through that, right? I needed to spend the time in a place like that. And it doesn't have to be
No.
the most, elegant or fine dining restaurant in your town or in your city.
But it has to be a place that people care about it.
For sure.
And I think that's what a lot of. So I posted this on social media yesterday, and I said kitchens aren't toxic. Working around assholes and idiots, or kitchens don't burn you out. Working around assholes and idiots is what burns you out. Because I think a lot of people think like, I'm in this industry and it sucks and everyone's an asshole. It's like, get yourself in a kitchen where they care.
For
It's
sure.
different. It's the industry is usually a reflection of the people that you're around, and a lot of people think that the entire industry is like that, but it's not true.
It's not.
It's not true. You could be in a great kitchen, you could be in a bad kitchen, and just because you worked in a bad kitchen doesn't mean all kitchens are bad. But I think I would advise people, like if you're in a place like we were talking earlier, you don't need permission to leave. If you're not loving it and it's not benefiting you and you're not improving as a human being and you're not getting closer to your goals, like fucking get into a kitchen where you do.
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna come save you. No one's gonna come fucking drive by and be like, "Hey, I happen to be Gordon Ramsay. Come work for me.
No.
I see you the saute cook over there. I saw you're pretty good. You cook that fish well." That doesn't happen. But anyway, I'm getting off track. I was thinking about you because I was talking about Robuchon the other day on the podcast, and I was thinking, well, fuck, you spent a lot of time in some of those crazy kitchens. So not only did you, like, we came up in the same area in Dallas under this World Master Chef Society competition style. So you were going, with the teams to go compete in, what did you say, Switzerland or
Sweden.
Sweden?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Visby, Sweden.
Going
First time
over
out of the
there.
country,
Yeah.
other than going to Guaritos.
Yeah. Going overseas, competing in, Culinary Olympics and Hotel Olympia and all these things.
Totally.
With the team. And I was involved too. And that's what I wanted to be more than anything else. Like, I mean, we talked about it last night when I was younger as a chef. Like, I want nothing more than to be a CMC,
Totally.
fucking competition chef. That's all I want to do. I want to compete and I want to fucking have that embroidery on my jacket. And then as time went on, for me, and I'm curious about you because, again, similar background. And we were both in Dallas at the same time also in that same circle. When I moved to California, and then I got a taste of not doing competition food, but doing fine dining at a high level and getting attention for it. And realizing like these techniques and skills that I learned from these competition chefs, but my creativity and the books that I'm stealing recipes from can allow me to create food differently. I was like, well, I kind of got the bug to like, okay, maybe ACF competitions is not for me. Maybe I just kind of like this high-end restaurant competitive mindset.
It's all competitive.
That was me. You said, fuck it, I'm going to Vegas. Right?
I did. I was enamored as a young culinarian on how a team could come together and build a grouping of dishes at a competition level.
Yeah.
Right. I always been kind of a competitive kid, in sports and whatnot. And, I was always the guy that was willing to bet I could run faster than you down the alley than, what I mean?
Yeah.
Barefoot. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it was just kind of always.
It's funny that you say the alley.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Exactly.
alley, right?
Yeah. 'Cause that's, growing up in Central El Paso, everyone's got an alley.
Yeah.
But like the competitive nature, right? Which I now understand how competitiveness and ego intertwine, right? And how neither one of them are bad unless you abuse them, right? But I was drawn in to the competition world as a 15, 16-year-old at the tech the VOTEC school that I was going to. Academy of Science and Technology is what it was called at Riverside.
Yeah.
But I competed in Skills USA VICA, which was this, national organization that was taking kids, in high school and allowing them to compete against each other in their, various trades. So I competed in culinary and I fucking won.
Yeah.
Right.
That
I won with a
addicting.
chicken Ballantine dish.
Yeah.
That I'd obviously never deboned a chicken, never created a farce, never done anything like this, never trust the chicken, none of it. And, Sean Nugent taught me how to do that.
Yeah.
As a 15-year-old. And I fucking won a scholarship to go to culinary school. Meanwhile, I was going to culinary to the vocational school half day and then going to this accelerated learning center afterwards, where you went there if you had dropped out of high school and were trying to get your credits quick, kind of quicker than you would if you were in a regular high school setting in order to graduate. I fucked off so hard after my culinary program in the daytime, and I was never going to the other part of the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was finding myself at Preppies in Juarez.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Ripping down some coronitas. I was, playing with fire. Let's just put it that way. But that introduced me to the world of competition.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, fuck, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
And then when I ended up getting my GED without a diploma because culinary school was like, hey, listen, if you don't use this, you're going to lose it. I was like, fuck, okay, I got to El Paso Community College. Here we go. You know what I mean? Made it happen, but ended up in a space in Dallas with this group of chefs that you're talking about, EWNCS, that gave me the opportunity to be a part of this group of people that cared about not only competition or being competitive, but they had camaraderie. They had family. They had bonds that were deep. They all had their independent restaurants, or they were all chefs in their independent places. And they all kind of came together, whether they were competitive in the dining world for guests or not, they were coming together.
Yeah.
And that, that made me want to have the CMC on my chef coat.
Yeah.
That made me want to be part of the ACF.
Right.
That made me want to be a part of all of that.
I mean, we were talking last night. I remember Ernst Grook, who's a certified master chef, was making these butter flowers, and I'm helping him. And I'm like,
Totally.
melting my brain, like, oh my God, he's making roses out of butter.
For sure.
Yeah. And this is a long time ago. So, I mean, I know to people today, it's like, yeah, I saw that on Instagram. It's like, yeah, I know. There was no Instagram. You learned from chefs and books. That's it.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, I spent time with Ernst as well and learned how to do my first tournée, to perfect it.
Yeah.
Because that was one of my jobs on one of the competitions that we ended up in Sweden I was the co-meat for the team.
Yeah.
So, other than making sure everyone's fucking knife bag was where it should be and everyone had their utensils that they needed for the competition, I was also doing, small jobs like that.
Yeah.
And fuck, if that one single tournée potato wasn't perfect that went on that plate with the beef rossini, it's fucking my ass.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm grateful for those times in Dallas.
Yeah, it was good times. Huh?
Yeah, but I ended up, as you said, I ended up moving on to Vegas. I ended up in Florida. Was in New York for a little while, but I found chefs like Joël Robuchon in the U.S., in Las Vegas, and Alain Ducasse, and that was a whole nother level of cooking that I didn't know existed either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said, just to give the audience context, and then we'll get back to Robuchon. You said, you were going over to Juarez. For people because I don't think this happens anymore. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. But when we grew up in this time, for people that don't know, El Paso and Juarez it's a border city, but I mean it's a 5-minute walk, right? Once you cross over the bridge, and this is before it was difficult to go to Mexico either way. And so there was a strip of clubs, and as long as you were about 13, you could walk over the bridge.
Totally.
And everyone did from the ages of 13 to 21, mostly, because if you were 21, you didn't have to.
Yeah.
You didn't have to. But you could walk over the bridge and you'd go into nightclubs and you'd party like in a fucking nightclub at 13 and 14 years old, and you'd buy a bucket of beers, drink and drown is what it was called, right?
Drink $10, drink and drown on Tuesday afternoons.
Drink and drown. You'd buy a bucket of beers, and some places like get you like $2 drink and drown.
Totally.
Bucket of Dos Equis.
Oh.
And you were getting wasted at 13 and 14 years old, coming back over the border.
All you had to say was American. If you could stand up and say American,
Yeah, you were in.
you were in.
And for people that don't know, it's like, yeah, it was wild because we were exposed to the nightclub life with drugs and alcohol at 13 and 14 years old.
For sure.
Yeah. And up, right? But that's when you started to experience it.
Totally.
Yeah. And I think that's an important piece of context because I don't know if anyone's if you're not from there, you don't know that happens.
I mean, I live in New England now, and I tell this story with parents
Yeah.
that are in my age group. And we get to talking about our childhood, upbringings, and I share some of these stories, and, some people don't understand.
Yeah, they're like,
The
you full of shit.
dynamic.
And like, no, it's
No,
true.
this is real.
Yeah,
and
it's real.
and I spend lots of time perfecting it.
Yeah. I was trying to fucking Jedi master it, right? Okay, so anyway, we got all over. So you wind up in Vegas, right? So where'd you wind up first? Which restaurant were you at?
I was on the opening team at Mix, which was an Alain Ducasse restaurant.
And that was his second restaurant in the U.S. at the time, right?
Yeah. He had the Essex House in New York, and
Right.
then the Vegas, which was on the 62nd floor of the hotel at the Mandalay Bay, and
Bruno's the chef.
Bruno Davion was the chef.
Shout out to Bruno.
Yeah, Bruno was the chef. I learned a lot from him and Sean O'Toole. I learned a lot there.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about perfecting the task.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about execution and teamwork, because we were, a team of 12 cooks and 4 sous chefs, that was the first kind of real brigade system that I had been a part of, other than chefs at the pass, sous chefs on the line, 2 or 3 line cooks.
Yeah.
Right. This was the first time where it's like, okay, I don't plate a single dish. Everything's passed to the pass, and chef plates the food and make sure the food that's coming his way is cooked perfectly.
Yeah.
And all your job was, as a chef de partie, was to cook the food.
Did you have a steep learning curve? Because obviously you know how to cook, you understand competition food, but then you get into the Ducasse system, and it's different.
You know how to cook. That's not the problem. The problem is getting your team to do what you want, when you want it. That's leadership. My book, Culinary Leadership Fundamentals, breaks down exactly how to run a kitchen without losing your mind. Stop yelling, start leading. Get the book at chefspsa.com.
Totally.
I'm assuming they sear a certain way, they season a certain way, they cook a certain way.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like everything that I had learned about seasoning heavy and cooking hard was kind of stripped back, and it was more, okay, let's let ingredients shine.
Yeah.
And let's manipulate them least possible, right? And, I had dishes like that fucking horseradish panna cotta dish, with the spicy tomato syrup and the
Legendary dish.
Legendary.
Yeah, Sylvain Portay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Sylvain was in the kitchen, and, he was tasting the food, and he was there, and Ducasse was there. Were they there every night for service? They weren't. But we had, you had such a respect for being in the kitchen that your goal was to do the best job no matter what.
Yeah.
And we were serving lots of people. We had an opportunity to, I had an opportunity to learn a lot about food that I hadn't learned yet.
Yeah.
And I had to really strip back everything that I had previously learned and kind of reevaluate and redevelop my skills, and realize I wasn't as good as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And now I'm cooking in a kitchen with people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I had been exposed to that, where I'm cooking, next to people from Sweden, from Japan, from France. You know what I mean? And that gave me a new opportunity as a cook.
Was there anything that you learned in that kitchen at Mix that is like, this is the best way I've ever seen it done, and I still do it to this day?
Risotto.
Risotto, how so?
Sylvain Portay taught me how to make risotto.
I mean, talk about having a good teacher, right?
Right? And it's because...
And for people who don't know who Sylvain Portay is, like, he's the fucking legend that was scaling Ducasse's system.
For sure.
Across the
world.
Yeah.
Across the world.
Yeah.
I was making risotto one day. He fucking came up behind me. He said, "What the fuck are you doing? Barbie cook. Get the fuck out of the way." Right? I show you. All right. And watched him do it. And then he gave me the wooden spoon back. And then he was like, "Now you do it." And from that day on, you know what I mean? And it was an 11-minute timer. And it was, this technique. And, I didn't understand that the bouillon should be at a boil. And, you know what I mean? When to season, when not to season. The al dente-ness of the rice and what you're looking for with the tooth. And we were reheating it during service. So we pre-cooked, we weren't cooking a la minute because we weren't.
Right.
That particular dish.
Like 80% or something?
Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? So that's one thing that I was like, okay, I had made risotto before, right?
Yeah.
Many
I got it.
Yeah. And
with all this heavy cream, right?
Yeah. And I realized quickly, I was like, okay, I've been doing this not the wrong way, but not the right way.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
there's like pushing the finesse further and further, right? Refinement.
Yeah. So I learned refinement there.
Yeah.
Right.
Was the system more just out of curiosity? Because I never worked under the Ducasse system. I've worked with people who have, but I've never. But specifically at Mix in Las Vegas with Bruno, how much of the system was influenced by Bruno, or how much of it is the Ducasse system?
At the core, it was the Ducasse system, and we cooked Ducasse dishes. Mm-hmm. But Bruno had the ultimate say in creating or changing or tweaking the dishes. Yeah. And he did that. And he was, in my opinion, super successful at doing that at a large scale.
Yeah.
Right? We were serving at the end, when I was there, we were doing 250.
Did you get the 2 stars while you were there?
Yeah.
Yeah. For people that don't know, so Bruno Dabian, he deserves for people to know his name.
For sure.
Right? So he's a very humble French chef. He's a phenomenal cook. And he was the chef at Mix in Las Vegas. Then he came to Dallas. Afterwards, he was the chef at the mansion on Turtle Creek. And he was, at that time, so I want to say he came to the mansion in like 2010-ish, maybe 2009. And he was taking over for Dean. Is he taking over for Dean? Maybe he was taking over for John Tizar. But anyway, he was the chef at the mansion on Turtle Creek. And it's a big deal. It was 2 Michelin star chef coming into Dallas. Mm. There was only 3 French restaurants at that level doing tasting menu style at the time in Dallas. It was Bruno at the mansion. It was myself at the Pyramid Room. And then it was the French Room. I want to say Jason Weaver may have been the chef. I don't know for certain. But I remember I was so competitive with Bruno because it's like, we're all kind of in the same circle. Like when in the tasting menu, French
for sure.
Cuisine, they got a souffle, we got a souffle. They got a pasta, we got a pasta. It was like they do 6 courses, we're gonna do 7. Fucking, we got to one up them. But I was so competitive with him. He doesn't know this, but this is me. That was like, man, I admired him so much. Because of what a great chef he was. Mm. He's a great chef, and he indirectly pushed me to become better because I said, okay, the level we were talking about being competitive earlier, the level of competition came out. Like, we got this 2-star chef coming in. Like, let's see what he could do. Seeing what he could do is like, okay, if he could do that, then the bar got raised.
For sure.
What is the expression? Rising tide lifts all boats.
For sure.
He was that rising tide in Dallas, and I have a lot of respect for Bruno because he made me better unknowingly. Yeah.
He made me better by, checking my mise en place daily, right? at that time, I was coming to the end of my time at Mix, and my roommate had just opened Joël Robuchon at the MGM Grand, the mansion of Joël Robuchon. You had L'Atelier and you had the mansion. And my roommate was working there, Stu Hummel and Marcel Vigneron. And
Marcel from Top Chef season 1.
yeah, he was just the apartment across the hallway from me at on South Las Vegas Boulevard at Diamond Sands was the name of the apartment complex. The best. I feel like all the cooks, if you were working at Picasso or you were working at, at Alex Strada's place, or you working at, everyone lived in this apartment complex.
Yeah.
So we had the most epic pool parties at this fucking apartment complex. Anyways, I didn't know who Joël Robuchon was.
Yeah.
Right? Heard the whispers of the name, but kind of didn't understand how important of a chef he was in the 20th century, right? And I said to Bruno one day, hey, I'm thinking about maybe going to Joël Robuchon. And fucking Bruno was just like, you can never leave Alain Ducasse for Joël Robuchon. It just doesn't happen. You shouldn't do it. It's not a good idea.
Is that just due to rivalry?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, some things happen at the
It's
restaurant.
like fucking switching gangs.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Some things happened at the restaurant, and, I was facing some adversity. And I had a conversation with him again. He's like, my one of my best friends is the chef, Joël. If I kept hitting him about it. So he gave me the opportunity and he connected me. He's like, I'm going to do nothing more but to just give you an email. And I took the reins from there. I also found myself having to leave Mix, so I kind of needed to figure it out. But, getting the opportunity to be on the opening team of Robuchon, which we quickly became, the first 3 Michelin star restaurant in Vegas, gave me another opportunity to work with the Brigade system of cooks and chefs from all over the world that allowed me a different perspective on cuisine, a different perspective on respect for food, respect for each other, teamwork, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever worked as much or as many hours or as much time. I devoted all my time and all my effort into, making sure that I was showing up there. But I was living in Las Vegas, so I was out till 4 or 5 a.m. and then showing up at 7, 8, 9 a.m. Right, on a few hours of sleep, but we were doing it. And that restaurant shaped me to become the leader, to accept and learn about the leadership role that a chef endures or has the opportunity to take on, right? Because they gave you autonomy there to be in charge of your own destiny, right? And if you didn't, your ass was grass. Like you do your own ordering for your station, right? As long as we're showing up and making sure everything was on par and expectation was being hit, you were responsible for start to finish everything. So that didn't, when you're responsible for everything start to finish as a chef de partie, it makes you think like the chef.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a position where I had to think like the chef. You know what I mean? I had to be organized like the chef. I was being taught how to become a chef.
Yeah.
Everything else I had done prior, I was just a chef de partie or a cook. You know what I mean? And my job was to cook food. It wasn't to think like the chef. It wasn't to make choices and decisions that a chef would make. And that really gave me, a perspective into being a culinarian that I hadn't received yet. So I'm grateful for that time there.
How did it feel? Because you were there when they got the 3 stars.
Yeah.
How did it? Were you? What position were you in when you left?
I was Sous chef of the Vion station.
And were you the sous chef when you received 3 stars there, or were you still in the chef de
I
partie?
was a chef de partie position and got promoted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How was the reaction? Because I'm sure for Joël Robuchon it was expected, but for the rest of the team that's getting the 3 stars for the first time, the commies, the CDPs, how did you guys celebrate at the pool party?
We had a party. I just can't give you all the details.
Yeah, fair. But how did it feel? Like, this is your first time. Like, you looking back, you're like, I'm from El Paso, from, like you said, from the Segundo Barrio,
Yeah.
going through the vocational school at Riverside, going through the EWMCS, being in Sweden at the competition, all of this to like, I'm the sous chef at a 3 Michelin star restaurant. Like, how did that?
Well, I got to be honest. I didn't understand the impact.
Yeah, it was just like, well done.
I didn't understand the impact globally, right? You got to remember at that time, the United States, we had New York and Vegas was the second, I believe, city that the Michelin Guide came to.
California, maybe?
It was either California or Vegas. It was
Yeah.
one of the two. Maybe
Yeah.
Vegas was a third,
Yeah.
right? We had a handful or maybe 2 handfuls of restaurants that had 2 stars. We had, less than a handful of restaurants that had 3 stars,
Right.
right? So we understood as cooks how important the Michelin Guide was, but there wasn't as much notoriety. We weren't scrolling on fucking Instagram to see who the new recipients of a Bib Gourmand or a 1 or 2 or 3 star was. It wasn't. You had to fucking find the book,
Right.
and open it and flip through and read the ratings and so on and so forth, or like find the website.
Right. You had to find the press release.
Right.
I'm thinking back, like, we didn't have Michelin in Dallas. We had the Zagat guide.
The
You had to
Zagat
look-
was everything.
You had to look back. What's your score? It was 29 or 30 out of your 0 to 30 or whatever.
That's
it
it.
was.
I was buying the Michelin Guide and the Zagat Guide when I was traveling to figure out where it is that I was going to, spend my time, what restaurants I was going to spend my time.
I had a lot of them. I have a lot of them still in my garage.
Dude,
a lot of those Zagat guides.
Yeah. So I'll say this. We knew that we were executing at a fucking immensely high level, right? And our peers respected us immensely. And we, let's just say we had carte blanche in Las Vegas at Tao nightclub and at, these places. We had carte blanche to go to these places because we were,
Yeah.
kind of like the best of the best at the time and so on and so forth. And so I utilized all of those partnerships and
utilized
friendships.
your 3-star card.
Yeah.
You swiped it, right?
But you know what I mean? When I would talk to friends that were, in Chicago or in Florida or in Texas, they didn't understand the magnitude of being a cook or a commis or a chef at a 3 Michelin star restaurant.
Yeah.
They didn't understand it because it wasn't as It wasn't as in our face as it is now, right? Now there's so much controversy.
Yeah.
Right. I'm sure here in Texas, we're experiencing the controversy of but back then there was not a platform for controversy to be shared organically or to be shared publicly.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you just kind of accepted it. And if you weren't traveling to Europe, you didn't understand the magnitude of the Michelin Guide.
Yeah. If you look back again, I'll ask you the same question that I asked you about your time in Ducasse. Is there something that you learned at Robuchon culinary-wise, cooking, that you still, that there isn't a better way to do this and you still do it to this day?
Gosh, there's so many. Pomme de terre, pomme puree.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Is it the equal?
It's equal parts butter potato.
Use potato pearls? Frozen potatoes?
No, I don't, but I have many of times.
The freeze dried?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were buying those. I've never tasted more potatoes in my life than when we were working on the recipe for the pommes puree at Robuchon, and none of the potatoes were good enough.
Yeah. What did you use? Because
For a lot for the beginning parts, all of the potatoes are being shipped to us from France
the Larat. Yeah.
with escherie butter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, you know, I use that as an example, but there's things as simple as as potato puree to, the way to truss a guinea hen to, you know, there's so many things that I still are still part of my repertoire that I learned in that kitchen. But I think if there's anything that became the most dynamic for me was respect for product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Last night we went to dinner. Without getting too much off subject, we're wrapping up. But last night we went to dinner, and I thought the food was exceptional. Shout out to Casey Wall at Le Calamar in Austin, Texas. He's cooking at an exceptional level in terms of flavor. It's not weird. The chicken tastes like great chicken. The sauce tastes like great sauce. Good technique. The gnocchi that we had, the chicken liver parfait with the strawberry gelée on top. Everything tasted delicious.
It was perfect.
It was delicious. One of the gripes I have right now with culinary is that it all looks prettier than it tastes, and it's all more creative than it needs to be. Right? They're trying to fucking sprint at the Olympics before they could run the relay race in high school, right? If you had an opinion right now, a strong opinion on the food, what is it? I just shared mine. I'm just curious. I'm sure we're aligned a little bit, but is there something that's been on your mind when it comes to food?
Food in general, or the dinner we had?
No, food in general.
Food in general.
Food in general.
I think we share similar perspective.
Yeah.
Right. And to me, I've had the opportunities to dine at some of, San Pellegrino best restaurants in the world, and also work in some of them. And I feel immensely fortunate for that. The thing that is the most important that I've learned is it fucking doesn't matter on what the food looks like, where it's sourced from, how it's sourced, what the garnish is, what fucking plateware you're using, whether it's a 30-hour sous vide or not. If it's not delicious, if it's not well seasoned, it doesn't matter. It fucking doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If a guest doesn't look up and say to their dining partner or to themselves, fuck, this is delicious, then you have not done your job as a culinarian.
Yeah.
Right? And that is a difficult thing to teach, because we're in this world of being a chef, and art and being creative is what pushes us into stardom. It pushes us into notoriety. It is what our society respects. I think that the thing that we should respect chefs that are doing real work is their food delicious or not?
Yeah. It's the ultimate test. Ultimate litmus test, right?
Yeah. I don't. And I had my own little 35-seat restaurant in Newport, Rhode Island, with the fucking 12-course tasting menu. And I will be honest, out of the 12 courses, there's probably 4 of them that were fucking delicious, and the rest were kind of like, all right, we need a new set for it's spring. We need a new set for the salmon.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we got to keep that on the menu because it's part of the rotation, and like, you know what I mean, or whatever.
Yeah. The playbook.
Right. And that playbook has changed a lot, and I have an immense amount of respect for chefs that are rewriting the narrative.
Yeah.
Right. Whether you're rewriting the narrative or not, I think the important question is, with your team, And when you look at yourself in the mirror, not and am I creating delicious food or not? Doesn't matter if it's on a paper plate or not. And I spent a lot of time in the fast casual world,
Yeah.
with the taquerias and so on and so forth. And I realized really quickly, having traveled Mexico, I want to stand on the corner and eat tacos on a fucking plastic plate, wrapped in plastic. You know how they do the thing where it's like, it's the, pink plate wrapped in a little plastic bag, and then they fucking rip the plastic bag off and reuse the plate. Like, I've had some of my best meals
Yeah.
having those experiences, because they were delicious. So I think at the core, if there's anything that I've taken away from being a chef, if I'm not doing my job, if I'm not thinking about before the garnish, before the plate, before the, you know what I mean? Whether or not it's like whatever it is, whatever shape, it's got to be delicious.
Last question before we wrap up. If you had Mount Rushmore, 4 chefs that should be on it, who are those 4 chefs that deserve to be on Mount Rushmore, in your opinion?
Wow. I think it should be Joël Robuchon, Ferran Adria, Renee, and I'm trying to think of someone else who is inspired. I'm talking me personally. I'm gonna go with someone that no one really, that he doesn't have a book, but Michael Scott, and he's somebody that inspired me in ways
Yeah.
to. He taught me that a chef is not just a cook. He has to understand how to market himself. He has to understand how to build a network, how to create relationships, whether it's with his people or with vendors or, you know what I mean? Whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I never had somebody teach me that. All those other guys, I've learned through them, whether being in their kitchens or reading about them or meeting them at a guest chef dinner or whatever. But those guys have pushed the mark on creativity and classical French cooking, right? But the impression that I took away from Chef Michael Scott taught me that a chef is more than just a cook.
Yeah. Shout out to Michael Scott.
Yeah.
I love Michael Scott too, by the way.
Yeah.
Shout out to Michael Scott. As we were talking earlier, known him for years.
A maniac.
Yeah, maniac. Well, Chef, where can people find you if they want to follow you on social media, if they want to hang out with you? Where can people look you up?
I live in Rhode Island.
Yeah.
I live in this tiny little town within Rhode Island that is an actual island called Jamestown. I still have one taco shop in Providence. I've got a couple new restaurants that I'm kind of trying to figure out whether or not I want to stay as a small business entrepreneur or not, and build restaurants from the ground up with my own money, which fucking sucks.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure that out. I'm trying to figure out whether or not, how I want to use my experience with cancer to maybe shape the next 10 years of my career, and how I can continue to be a mentor in different ways. But if you're coming to New England, look me up at Jake Rojas at Instagram.
Awesome.
Drop me a line.
I appreciate you coming on because I've wanted to have you on for a long time. It's just we can never.
I live on the other side of the world.
Yeah, you live on the other side of the world. So getting you while you were in town was perfect. So thank you, Chef.
Yeah, it's my absolute pleasure. And I just want to say I'm grateful for what you're doing for our industry, shining light, giving people opportunity to share their experiences and shape the voices of others.
Thank you, Chef. I
appreciate you.
Yeah.
All right, that's the show. If you liked it, make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. If you want more Chefs PSA, go to chefspsa.com. Get yourself some books, get yourself some merch, including Culinary Leadership Fundamentals and the Line Cook Survival Manual. If you want early access to episodes, you can get them on Spotify and Substack by becoming a paid member. The link is in the notes. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
No small drink in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.